If you want to be more effective in your work and in your life, and you'd like to have more confidence that you're meeting your intentions, this is where it begins. Welcome to Do Busy Right, helping you organize your information and manage your attention so that they work for you, not against you. We educate you and encourage you by discussing ways to be more effective, not more exhausted. Let's do busy right. Hi there. Today, I want to talk about calm productivity, and I'm going to contrast the results of attention management, which is what I talk about, to the results of effort to do time management. And then I've got a piece I'm going to play for you that's about how do we find the wastes in our attention. And that's a recording of a public talk I did at a conference at the University of Alabama, and it's titled The Three Enemies of Productivity. When we look at productivity, the actual thing that we all want is productivity, efficiency, and these are probably synonyms. Both of them mean this notion of outputs per unit input or something like that. And when we talk about productivity, we typically think of the input as time. We typically think of productivity as the number of outputs we can produce per unit time or given an amount of time. Now, on the other hand, we use the same kind of equation when we talk about organizational productivity or factory productivity. It's outputs per unit something. Now, quite often in organizational productivity, we talk about output per dollar cost, per unit dollar, or potentially some other things. But when we talk about individual productivity, personal productivity, and knowledge work, then typically we're going to wind up talking about maximizing results per unit time. And that's a fine measurement, but it does lead to a trap. Because if we start maximizing results per unit time, then we get into things that are not good states for us to be in while we're doing knowledge work. We want to be calm, relaxed, focused productivity. We don't want to be in a hurry. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit, is why we want to look at attention, because when we do, then what we're going to achieve, we're going to avoid the bad results of looking at output per unit time. Now, when we look at these efficiency equations, we've got to remember that they all come from a factory mindset. They all come from a physical product mindset. And that's not terrible, but it is challenging in the sense that when we produce physical product, there's typically not any variation. There's not any meaningful variation, I should say. We have a specification and we produce a physical output. And it's very difficult in a factory setting to embellish a whole lot on that physical product. It largely is what it is, and the variation that leads to quality issues is actually very small and very much pointed at the functionality of the device. Now, when we look at knowledge work, there's immense variation in the potential product that is produced that satisfies even the same stated need. We can embellish in knowledge work in ways that are either hard to detect or intended to give greater satisfaction to the end consumer. And we can do this, again, the key is we can do this in ways that are simply not possible in the physical product space. Now, when we deliver knowledge work. The information that we're delivering must be comprehensible, and we know this. I can have the most perfect information for you, but if I write it down on a piece of paper in a language that you don't understand, then it's useless. So part of the product of knowledge work is that comprehensibility. So when we use the physical product-based efficiency equations, we assume that output is easily and readily measurable. And in knowledge work, quite often it's not. But then we further compound this problem by talking about it per unit time. And I'll get to that in just a minute. Now, when we look at the notion of time management as compared to the notion of attention management. So anytime I'm looking at efficiency, the first thing I want to do, the easiest thing to do, is to get rid of waste. And waste is inputs that don't produce good outputs. Another form of waste is output that doesn't meet the specification, but we've already talked about that a little bit in this wide variation in knowledge work outputs, and there's other ways to deal with that variation in output. But when we look at the input, it's, are we wasting any inputs? Are we breaking any inputs? Are we throwing any inputs in the trash before they turn into outputs? And this is the quickest and easiest way to improve the efficiency of a process. Now, when we look at when we look at knowledge work and we look at our own productivity, the notion of wasting time is challenging. And there's a lot of things that may contribute to the result, but they do so in very tangential ways. So there's lots of things that look like waste. And so instead of doing a careful analysis of this, there's many uses of time that look like waste. But instead of doing a careful analysis of this, then we just try to shrink time. We go straight to the input and we say, okay, it's got to take less time. But we struggle to do that for reasons that we'll get into. But primarily, just to sum it all up, in knowledge work, speeding up is bad for us, despite the fact that using less time is often good. So we're talking about waste and identifying waste. And the first piece of waste that we can identify, and this is usually fairly straightforward, is poor utilization of the asset. So in a factory, if you've got a machine that produces your output and that machine spends 6 hours a day unplugged and not running, then it's pretty easy to see where your output problem might be. And that's pretty straightforward. But that really just begs the question for us, because as we're looking at productivity, we're trying to define what the asset is. And if we think about output per unit time, then we tend to believe that time is the asset. And you've heard language like this from people that talk about time management, that the minutes are the asset. And so we got to think through it. And I would suggest that the asset is not time per se. The asset is attention. And you've heard me say this before. And I would say that what's being challenged in us trying to get better efficiency is not our time, but it's that attention. Now, there's tons of ways that our attention could be wasted. It may even be harder to see than wastes of time, but we also know pretty well when our attention is not where it ought to be. There are plenty of areas where we could shore that up without too much hassle. But the first thing we want to recognize is that there's really no way in the short term for us to overclock. And I did a podcast about overclocking before. It's a computer term where you actually speed up the clock that makes the computer do calculations. And in the short term, you get a faster computer, but in the long term, because of the physics of the situation, you're actually tearing the machine up. Now, for us, in terms of knowledge work, it doesn't have to be the machine gets torn up. If we try to rush, if we try to go faster than we can, then we wind up making mistakes. But that tends to be the focus that we get to when we use time management and we try to squeeze time. As one example, in the extreme, if we rush to make time efficient, then the easiest way to do that is to cut corners and to not utilize time. Well, that's cutting corners is not necessarily efficient if you're producing poor outputs. So that's one example. The rushing does nothing for us. So we want to think through and get a sense of what calm and peaceful has to do, because that's the opposite in my mind of rushed. So at one end of the spectrum is this rushed, this panicked, this hurriedness. And at the other end is this calm, peaceful, focused productivity. Now, that's my justification for having you look at your attention rather than your time. That's the first justification. The second justification for managing our attention rather than our time is I believe that we can strengthen our attention. We can train it and we can tune it up to be ever more effective at what it's doing. Like when we train our bodies to be stronger or faster, we can train our brains to focus better and give better attention. Now that we've focused on attention, we want to look at waste. I'll say that the big picture, and I get in trouble for this a lot of times. People fuss at me before they understand what I'm saying exactly. And they think, oh, well, if you're going to make me utilize my attention 24 hours a day, then you're not going to let me sleep and you're not going to let me watch TV and you're not going to let me do those kinds of things. That is macro waste of attention. Do I think we waste attention in the macro state? Do I think we waste attention by watching too much television? Probably. I think there are better things we can do with our attention. On the other hand, I'm far from advocating that we try to spend 16 hours a day paying focused attention to our work. I don't think humans are capable of that. And I certainly think that if a human was capable of that, they would have to be highly trained. So I don't really talk about macro waste of attention a whole lot. If you've heard me, if you've had my coaching or heard me in a talk, then the macro waste of attention, it tends to be covered by Stephen Covey and the 4 quadrants of attention, important versus urgent kind of stuff. Now, we say, okay, we don't want to waste our attention. But one of the wastes of attention is when our attention wanders. We lose our focus. And we don't really know what we would say is gone away when we lose our focus. But we do have some terminology to talk about it. And I'll give you an example of this terminology. And this is a way of maybe understanding more about what we mean when we say attention. So I heard a podcast that was about how you talk to your kids could spoil their sense of adventure, could spoil their courage in some ways, or their willingness to try things. And the example that was given was when our kids are doing something adventurous that we want to allow, then we tell them to be careful. So if they're going on a big skateboard ride or they're very young and they're trying to learn to ride their bicycle and to be safe on the streets with their bicycle, when they're learning to drive a car, we say, be careful. Well, careful is not what we're really seeking, because if they were going to be careful, they wouldn't be doing the thing that they're doing. A kid wants to go climb a tree, that is not a careful behavior. If you want to be careful, stay on the ground. And what this podcast said was, okay, instead, don't tell them to be careful, tell them to pay attention while they're doing what they're doing. And that will enhance their physical safety. And that struck me because that way we do understand that there are ways to think about attention that help us utilize it properly. And by the same token, when we say utilize your attention, focus, we have some understanding of what we mean. Pay attention. Don't go fast. Pay deeper attention. Also, don't slow down. Pay deeper attention. So that's this macro idea and this notion of wasting attention. So we want to have greater focus. We want to utilize our attention more thoroughly, just like when we want our kids to be safe in risky activities. So we've talked about these big macro wastes, and that's all I've got to say about that is the Covey quadrant will guide you here. And if you need some coaching there, let me know. Be happy to do that. Now, when we look at micro wastes of attention, these are these small pieces of waste, but they happen a lot. And I would say the primary micro waste of attention is task switching. We lose our focus because our focus is captivated by something else. And then we switch task, at least mentally, we switch task. And that's a waste. In fact, if you pile it all up, it has an enormous cost during our day because we task switch so often. So there's two reasons to stay on task for longer periods of time. One is to avoid the cost of switching, and which we've talked about. And then the second is the longer you can focus, the longer you can pay attention, deep attention, the more challenging, more thoughtful problems we can solve. And more challenging and more thoughtful problems are more valuable to solve. Now, the flip side, when we're task switching and we pay this enormous attention cost, is we feel like we get on feeling like we've been working all day and we were busy all day, but we don't feel like we got much done and we can't point to the things that we accomplished. And that's a bad feeling and one that we want to avoid, but that's the culmination of lots of these micro wastes. We were at our desk all day and we weren't surfing the internets, but we still don't feel like we had much in the way of productivity. And that's where this micro waste has piled up. So I wanted to bring you all the way here to the micro wastes because that's what the presentation is about. The three enemies of productivity is about micro waste of attention. So I want you to go ahead and listen to it with an open mind because I'm not going to fuss at you about watching TV as I'm giving this talk. So here we go. It's a pretty common keynote for me. If it resonates with you, of course, I'm happy to come and give it to an organization or however you need it. Would love the opportunity to do that and talk with your people in these ways. But here we go with the three enemies of attention.
We're human beings. We like to do things. We want to do things. It's what we're made for. We fiddle with the world. Okay? We see something that it doesn't suit us and we go fix it. There's an infinite number of things to do. How many of them can you do at one time? One. So the problem is you have an infinite number of things to track that you're not doing right now. Infinity minus one is infinity. So what are we doing? How do we solve this problem? Typically what people do is they count on their 3 pounds of gray goo to track this infinite number of things. And your 3 pounds of gray goo will try to do that. And it will fail. Invariably. And I learned this lesson many different ways and many different times. But one time was I was at my office working, and my wife calls me up and she says, "Hey, get some milk on the way home." I said, "Sure thing." It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. "Sure thing, not a problem. Happy to." Right? But I can't do it right now. So the rest of the afternoon I'm trying to work. So what happens the rest of the afternoon? What's my brain doing to me the rest of the afternoon? Milk. Milk. Hey, milk. Don't forget the milk. Kim's going to be mad if you don't get the milk. Where's the milk? Don't have the milk. When's the one time my brain will not remind me? 30 seconds before I need to turn right into Publix. I'm bebopping on the radio, or I'm explaining to somebody else how they're the best driver I've ever seen, or whatever it is that's on my mind, right? And so when we store things in our head, they all rummage around in there. Your memory is a wonderful thing, but it's not time-bound, and so it won't remind you at the appropriate times. So we've got to have another way to track these things, get them out of our skull. Knowledge work. Who's heard the term knowledge work? Knowledge work is what you guys are learning to do. Knowledge work is work that we do with our skull. For most of human history, we've worked with our hands, our muscles, right? A little bit with our skulls, craftspeople, but largely with our muscles. And we've moved things in the world, physical work. Now we're doing knowledge work. Knowledge work means you take information in, you apply knowledge to it, you produce information out, and you get paid. Programming, problem solving, project management, management generally, all of this is knowledge work. You're applying your knowledge and your skills out into the world. The challenge with that is your brain wants to be busy doing other things. So in knowledge work, your most valuable tasks, your most valuable results require your maximum resource up here, right? You solve easy problems, you get paid a little bit. You solve hard problems, you get paid a lot. And because technology is what it is, you can't resolve the same problem twice. So it's always a new problem you got to solve. A problem that you at least are unaware of the solution to. Because if you were aware of the solution, you'd copy paste Google AI, right? It's changing a little bit with AI out there. So, David Allen wrote a book called Getting Things Done in 2004. And his goal was to put us in a position where we could actually be productive in the world. Very smart guy. Your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. Okay? So we have these ideas. And there's no reason to have an idea a second time unless you just enjoy having the idea. Okay? But we store things up here. And it causes us a problem. So we want to get more efficient and more effective at doing what we do. And this is general. This is knowledge work stuff. Being a student is a knowledge work job. Make sense? You're taking in information, you're applying your brain to it, you're producing information out. So we want to intervene as a good manager in an organization, and we want to make this process more efficient. So how are we going to do that? What do we actually do to investigate into the efficiency of this process? The second step of any productivity intervention is to invent new tools. And that's what most of us try to do when we look at this problem. Hey, I'm having trouble managing my stuff. Well, let me go find a new tool, right? How many tools are there out there that promise that they'll make you more productive, Go back to the infinity slide, right? Now, will they? Maybe so, maybe not. Learning curve's a challenge, right? That's the second step. So if that's the second step, then the first one is obviously go through and eliminate waste in the process. Okay? Every process has waste. We've got to identify it and eliminate it. So where are we in this? In the process that we're looking at, this attention process, and how do we apply our attention and use it well? What things are waste of our attention? Depends, right? Anybody binge watch Netflix? Right? I mean, is it recreation? Is it just a time waste? So I was talking about this last night at the dinner table with some colleagues, and we were talking about this notion of there's this collision that's happening right now, and what's happening is our work is demanding our attention in ways that it didn't do for our grandparents. You go into a factory, they put lug nuts on a wheel, they get paid a nice wage, off we go. Okay? We have to have our attention on it. We bring it home with us. So our work requires our attention. For years, decades even, our entertainment and relaxation has involved applying our attention, right? We watch TV, we listen to music, it's very mental activity. And even now, what's happening is the software developers, social media, have decided that they can manipulate apps in such a way that they're attention addictive. And their goal is, when you light up Facebook, or any of them, what's their goal? One more time. All they want you to do, pull down one more time. And they know how to do this, right? So these three forces are competing for our attention, and the problem is we've got to have our attention to be productive. Does that make sense? Does that resonate? Attention is the key. It's not time management. You can manage your time till you're blue in the face. If you've got an hour to work on a presentation and you got that booked in your calendar and you sit there for an hour looking for new pictures to put in the presentation, you've effectively wasted that hour. Put your attention where it needs to be. Okay? Everybody tracking? Okay, so we've got three primary wastes. The first, I'm going to talk about these in order of how easy they are to deal with. Three, in order of easiest to deal with to hardest to deal with. So the first one's interruption. Now, we all know what interruption is. In an office, you're at home, working, whatever. You're deep down in this problem, and you just about got it. And you can see the glimmers of a solution. I'm talking largely to the programmers in the room. Hey, maybe if phone rings, siren, dog barks, baby cries, what happens to your idea? Can you get it back? Maybe. How long did it take you to get there the first time? A long time. Interruption. So it's a problem. Now, it's also the easiest to deal with an asterisk. We have, among other people, we have social structures that help us deal with interruption. Close the door, wear headphones regardless of whether there's any sound coming to them or not. People will leave you alone. Some offices, Cube Farms, put up little red flags. Leave me alone. So that helps, but then we trap ourselves because what do we do with our technology? Does your technology ding at you? You have calendar reminders set up? Does your phone make noise or vibrate? Interruption. And culture tells us that we have to do it this way. So it's the easiest to manage, but you still got to manage it. So I will say this, I have a podcast that I'm on, episode 73, where I talk about all these things in more detail. And there's a good one on alarm-based reminders versus process-based reminders. And alarm-based reminders are the only thing computers really know how to do is give us alarm-based reminders, which are intended to what? Interrupt. It's based on an alarm clock. What's an alarm clock supposed to do? Wake your butt up from the deepest sleep you've ever had. And it works. It's a great interruption machine. Interruption. Number one, deal with it. We know how to do this. Help people understand when you can't be interrupted. Figure out how to silence your phone for periods of time. Okay? Put it in another room. Some studies show that you lose between 15 and 20 IQ points just because your phone is on your desk. even if it's face down and silent. Don't know what that means, but there it is. All right. Did I promise you controversy? Multitasking. Multitaskers in the room. Show me your hands. Who's a multitasker? Who's a multitasker? Who's a good multitasker? Keep them up. Who's a good multitasker? If you're just an average multitasker, put your hand down. Okay? Who's a really good multitasker? If you're not great, put your hand down. Okay. From you five, I need a volunteer, please. Don't volunteer if you don't want to be proven wrong. Seriously, come on. Yeah. I'm not going to hurt you. I don't bite. I've had hundreds of students in class that thought I was going to, and I didn't. Tell us all your name.
But I go by Cash.
Cash.
Okay.
Thank you. That makes it easier for me. I'm an old Alabama boy.
That's okay.
We're going to do three things, and we're going to do each one of them separately.
Okay.
We're going to do each one out loud and as fast as you can.
Okay.
Simple? Okay. Count to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Great. Second and a half. Everybody can do it. You can do it in your sleep. Yeah? Okay. Task 2. Say the first 10 letters of the alphabet that's through J out loud as fast as you can. Go.
So J.
Mm-hmm.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M. Oh, well, I went fast.
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Still fast. Characteristically, people will make a mistake like that. They'll go too far. They'll stop too soon. Because we're used to counting 1 to 10, but we're not used to stopping at J with the alphabet. The song in your head doesn't stop at J. Who listens? Who does the alphabet to the song? Okay, fine. Okay. Third task, and then we'll let you sit down, and thanks so much for your help. Okay? Out loud, as fast as you can, I want you to take those two lists and merge them. 1A, 2B, go.
1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, 6F, 7G, 8H, 9I, 10G.
You did very, very well. Most people can't complete it, Cash.
Oh.
Most people get stumbling and they get embarrassed and they never complete the task. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Give Cash a hand. Thank you, Cash. So what did we learn? 2 tasks. You can do them in your sleep. Together, sequentially, they'd take about a second and a half. I'm sorry, about 2.5, maybe 3. Okay? Put them together, try and merge them, and what happens? How long do we take? 10 seconds? Now, could Cash and I practice that sequence long enough to where we had it memorized and we could do it in 3 seconds? Yes, we could. Okay, that's how you know how to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. You learned it when you were 6. Or you learned it the first time you had a piece of bubble gum if it wasn't 6. Multitasking, it's bad. Okay? People get upset with me. It's okay. Okay? Even if you can, why would you want to? Because you're constantly task switching. What was Cash doing? Programmers in the room. She had 2 lists. She was putting a pointer in one and switching to the other. And then moving the pointer, switching back, moving the pointer. Right? Heavily taxing on your brain. Yes? Why do it? Single task whenever you can. Now, the problem with multitasking is we get trapped into it. One of my favorite phrases from people is, I'd better do this before I forget about it. Anybody ever said that? What were you doing when the thought occurred to you? Something else. And you go, bing, right? And you go, oh, I better do it before I forgot about it. Okay? Well, I don't know what the right time is to do whatever it is you're thinking about doing, but before you forget about it, it is almost definitely not that. Okay? So instead of I'd better do it before I forget about it, I'd better capture it before I forget about it. Get it out of my skull, get it out into the world where I can do something with it. Multitasking. How we doing? Fight against it. I define multitasking as the lack of intentional focus on one task. Now, what's interesting about multitasking is that our devices and our culture are training us to do it. Okay? And this goes back to ancient history, and I know because I'm ancient. When my mom said you cannot study and listen to the stereo at the same time, she was right. Okay? So now, culture, society, technology is tempting us to do multiple things at the same time. Right? So train yourself to focus on one task. Because you focus on it, what happens? You do it better, you do it faster. And then you can move on to the second thing, right? If you run into the challenge where you have to merge ABC and 1, 2, 3, see if there's a way to do them one and then the other. So that's a mental image for you to think about. Am I doing the thing that Larry asked Cash to do? Right now, am I doing that thing? If not, great. Learn how to do that. A lot of what we do is we relearn how to focus. We relearn how to put our attention somewhere and keep it there. Then people go, well, how do I, what's the baby step, right? What do I try to learn first if I'm trying to learn to put my attention somewhere? Do I need to climb to the top of a mountain for 2 weeks and sit there in a robe and go Om? No. Okay. The single best starting skill for learning to put your attention somewhere and keep it there is read a book. Electronic is okay, audio is not. Read a book, engage with it, okay? Preferably fiction, because what happens when you're reading a fiction story? What happens when you read generally? You're reading along and, words going by, okay? And then words go by and your eyes are moving and you were thinking about something else and you find a part in the story you're lost. Oh, I don't remember what happens. Let me go back, right? And so what we're trying to learn is that moment when our attention wanders so we can get it quick and bring it back. Okay? It's hard to do. But learning how to do that with, 15 minutes at a time, sit there in a chair, read a book. Okay? And what you're doing is you're teaching yourself that focus. Okay? And again, we don't need focus lying on a bed of nails focus. We don't need focus walking on a bed of coals focus. Okay? We just need some and keep it where it's at. Multitasking. Okay? So that's 2. First is interruption. Second, multitasking. Multitasking you handle by making the decision to not do it. Hey, I'm going to spend 15 minutes on this one thing. I'm not going to let that other stuff happen. I'm actually going to turn the music off while I code, or whatever it is you're doing. The worst is trying to listen to an audiobook, because when you're listening to an audiobook, what are you doing with your eyes? Yeah. And are you paying attention? No, you're not, right? That's fine. If it's just, blah, 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 if it's just background music or whatever while you're mowing the grass, let's not get stupid about this, right? But at the same time, let's focus when we need to focus. Great question. Interrupt, stop, sometimes. Sometimes you'll want to capture that. So I have actually worked very hard to develop a habit of taking book notes. So when I read, I want to take notes, because otherwise I have to go back to my bookshelf and find the book that said what I think it said. And I've got 150 books on my bookshelf. It takes forever. So I barely had time to read it the first time. I sure don't have time to read it a second time. So trying to develop that, right? So if that happens to you a good bit while you're reading, maybe you keep a pencil and a piece of paper nearby. You go, oh, what is that word? Right? Great way to learn. Ebooks, a lot of times that interruption is pretty simple. You just poke on it. Right? Great question. There is actually the first episode of my podcast is about taking a call on your mobile phone while you're driving. Why would you want to do that? Okay? Oh, it's urgent. It might be urgent. I don't know if it's urgent. Let me answer the phone and see what's going on. Okay? Well, you're going to give that call part of your attention. And if it's urgent, it needs all of your attention. My dad's a realtor in Birmingham, 80 years old. He's still realtoring. I don't know why. He's driving down the road and he takes a call from a client. He's driving down the road. He's 80. I'm in the car with him. And the client is telling him what a real estate client is going, oh, well, I want to see the house on Somerset at 2015, but then I also want to see the one at 3208. And that's Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I've got a few minutes, so let's go see this, right? All this complex information. Well, he doesn't have a pencil. Even if he did, he can't use it. And so what's he got to do with this information? Try to store it here. No good. Okay? If he didn't answer the phone, what would happen? He's got this recorded piece of information that he can get to at his leisure. Same thing, either, hey, Randy, that's my dad's name, I want to see these properties, here they are, blah, 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 right? Or, hey, call me back. I'll be available at 3. Either way, he's getting the information in a way he can handle it. Make sense? Multitasking. We lose it. We don't pay attention. We don't encode it the first time. Fair enough? Okay. Distraction. Number 3. It's number 3 because it's the hardest one to deal with. Okay? So, distraction, what happens? What's the difference between distraction and interruption? Internal versus external. Distraction is what I described about the milk all afternoon. It's my brain going, hey, do the thing. Hey, you better do it before you forget about it. Hey, you forgot to feed the dog. Okay, distraction. It's a little bit of a challenge to deal with because we store stuff in our brains. And if it's stored up here, the only thing your brain knows to do with it is to remind you of it at inappropriate times. Don't tell me that I can't do anything about it. And so we're constantly going, hey, shut up. Shut up, brain, shut up. The way to deal with distraction, and this is why it's the most challenging one, and also it's challenging because these are the things that you're postponing. Remember the early slide? Infinite number of things to do because you're a human being. Things you can do at once. Things you can do right now is one or perhaps a very small number. So there's an infinite number of things then that you're postponing and have decided to not do now. If you store those in your head, what happens? Your brain is constantly trying to tell you that you need to do them. Oh, you haven't done this yet. Haven't fed the dog yet. Right up until, of course, it's time to feed the dog, in which case your brain is thinking about something else. So in order to deal with distraction, we've got to get that stuff out of our skulls. We've got to put it out in the world into a physical or quasi-physical system so that we can manage it effectively. Anybody worried about anything recently? Big test, a little worried, right? Describe the process of worrying about something. Anybody? Y'all know how to do this. Deadline? Yeah, that's why you're worried, because you got a deadline coming up. When you say I'm worrying about something, what's your brain actually doing? Stress is also another thing. Anxiety, right? We're describing this. What's it doing?
Just going over.
Oh, I got a test. Oh, I got a test. I need to study. Oh, have I studied enough? Oh, I got a test. Oh, I got a test. Like a dog chained to a stake, just going round and round and round. That's how your brain deals with stuff, unless you eject it, get it out, where you can see it, and then deal with it practically. Write it down. Put it out in a system somewhere. If you write it on a piece of paper, please do not make that piece of paper sticky. Okay? Use a regular piece of paper. Okay? Get it out of your head. Okay? Now, we're in a world where if it's not in your head, in y'all's in y'all's lives and in mine, if it's not in your head, where is it probably?
Reminder.
Phone, computer, out there in cyber, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Right? Now, who has a lovely, fancy, blank-bound journal? Do you ever refer back to that? How many of them do you have on your bookshelf? A few? Yeah. Sexy, though, looks professional, huh? Yeah. Fair enough. I don't have maybe I do. I have the world's sexiest personal digital assistant. Folded piece of copy paper. Cost me about half a penny. Fits in my pocket. I got a pen tucked in my shirt. I keep track of stuff. When I get home, back to my office, I take it out of my pocket. What did we talk about in the meeting? Oh, I've got to deliver X, Y, and Z by next Tuesday. Let me put that in my system. I drop it, it doesn't break. I spill coffee on it, I turn the page over. If I don't happen to have one, then I can probably borrow one. Out into the world. Get things out there in the world. And then develop a system to manage them out there in the world. So that's what we do with distraction. It's a lot of stuff, so it's a lot to manage out there in computer world. You all are technologists and you understand how to do these sorts of things, okay? So you can build a system that will work, right? Tracking things. All right, so again, we're constantly thinking about postponement, okay? Who has ever procrastinated? Come on, okay. Procrastination and postponement are two very different things. Postponement is making the decision that now is not the right time to do this, I'm going to do it another time. Procrastination is, I'm going to look up more pictures for my slide deck rather than adding text to my slide deck. Okay. Multitasking is often procrastination. Okay. Somebody 15 years ago defined multitasking as the fine art of doing two things at the same time that you'd rather not be doing at all. Or ignoring two things, right, by doing them at the same time. So, procrastination, postponement, those kinds of ideas. How are we doing? So that's the third one. You see these in areas of your life? Interruption, external. The environment gives us interruptions. Other people give us interruptions. We have social cues, we can manage that. Our technology gives us interruptions. We can manage our technology, okay? And we need to. Multitasking, it's a choice you make. Make a different choice, right? Be very careful about engaging in that and building a habit, right? Be very careful about, having your laptop open during meetings. Who's been on a Zoom meeting in the last month? Who's been on a Zoom meeting? Okay, here's an example of distraction. So the Zoom window's up, yeah? Is there something else up behind that? Is it your email? Where is your attention? Is your attention on the meeting? Or is right? So what are you choosing to do? Okay. Now, does every meeting you attend need your complete and total focus? I would be lying to you if I said yes. But it's something to think about. I don't know. Find a company where if you don't need to be in a meeting, you can say, hey, I don't need to be in the meeting. Right? They're out there. They're not terribly common. All right. I don't talk about time management, and I alluded to this before. You can't manage time. Time's something that happens to us. You can't stop it. You can't save it. I'm actually looking into some people who talk about time dilation experiences, which actually has nothing to do with recreational pharmaceuticals, surprisingly enough. But that's a path as well. But, right, your attention. Think about your attention. You can choose to apply it. You can strengthen it. You can make it better. If your attention is better, your results are better, and you're faster, as we demonstrated with our multitasking. So a lot of people want to talk to you about time management. That's fine. You got to have a calendar. But that's not your primary structured tool for keeping up with what you need to keep up with.
I hope that resonated with you and you found the energy of the live presentation to be inspiring for you. That was a good audience and I enjoyed talking with them. Tried to deal with the Q&A a little bit, but most of that didn't come through. But that gives you an idea of how to approach these three different ways in which our attention is taken away from us, these micro wastes. So again, love to give this talk. I think it's one that people enjoy. So if you'd like for me to do that around your parts, just let me know. In any event, this would be a good one to share with some folks. It's entry level and it's actionable and it's something that people can think about and have some real takeaways from. Love to hear from you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you want to hit me directly, you can reach me, Larry at dobusywrite.com. So avoid the micro wastes, avoid task switching, and I'll help you get out there and do busy right. I'll leave it there for now. This is Larry Tribble, Ph.D. Thanks for taking some time to improve your task and information management on the Do Busy Right podcast. The show is dedicated to helping you think about how to get better at working. And we do this by improving your attention and your focus. I believe that your work is not just about your job, but about all the tasks that you do to turn yourself, your environment, and your relationships into what you want them to be. What we're really talking about here is the underpinnings of becoming who you want to be. The primary way I help people is through coaching the Attention Compass process. Attention Compass is 4 workflows and a tool set that support our information, task, and attention management. I help people with big goals to build habits that put them in a position to achieve. We do this by eliminating wasted time and wasted attention. If you'd like to know more, you can find me on LinkedIn or go to dobusyright.com for more information. Have a good week, more effective and less exhausted. Do Busy Right.